In the winter of 1932, a Kansas farm could sit 10 miles from town and one bad night from losing food that had to last until spring. The wind crossed the wheat fields. Dogs barked beyond the kitchen light. A fox at the hen house, a stranger near the barn, or movement in the livestock pen demanded the same thing: a shotgun that worked before help arrived. Depression-era catalogs still placed basic farm guns within reach of families who could not afford a new repeater. On an isolated property, one shotgun alone might guard the animals, protect the house, and put meat on the table. Number 14 was built to load itself, yet its worst danger could begin behind the muzzle. Number 7 moved like steel, sliding over oiled glass. Number 3 left the wagon box, entered military service, and returned with a reputation no catalog could manufacture. And number 1 became so trusted that families counted it with the land. Before we start, subscribe. Let us count down 25 forgotten shotguns American farmers trusted when help was miles away. Number 25, the Stevens Model 94. One Smithsonian example measures 44.5 inches overall, with a 28-inch barrel and a break-action frame built by Savage Arms. That plain construction explains why the Model 94 became a first shotgun across rural America. There was one barrel, one external hammer, and one shell behind the kitchen door. A young shooter could not hide carelessness behind a magazine full of ammunition. In a cornfield or along a fence row, the first lesson was patience. A father passes the gun across the kitchen table while dogs bark beyond the barn. If the shot misses a fox moving toward the hens, there is no second chance to repair the mistake. The Model 94 was inexpensive, but the responsibility attached to it was not. It taught restraint before it taught shooting. Number 24. The Winchester Model 37. Winchester introduced the Model 37 inches the mid-1930s and promoted it as a practical gun for teaching young shooters the basics. It carried the company name, an exposed hammer, and a break-open action simple enough to understand at a glance. For a working family, that mattered. A famous repeater could cost more than the farm budget allowed, but the Model 37 offered Winchester steel without Winchester complexity. It became the Christmas gun, the first season gun, and sometimes the only shotgun in the house. Winter light falls across the receiver as one shell is placed beside it on the kitchen table. Outside, something moves near the feed shed. The farmer has one chance to stop the loss before morning. The family could afford only one shot, but it could still afford Winchester. Number 23. The Iver Johnson Champion. The Champion reduced a shotgun to parts a farmer could understand: a break-open barrel, an external hammer, and one shell. Period versions appeared in several gauges, but the idea never changed. Keep the mechanism simple and the price within reach. In lean years, a gun like this could cost only a few dollars. That made it cheaper than losing chickens or watching rats spoil stored grain. There was almost nothing inside to jam and almost nothing outside to admire. A possum scratches inside the smokehouse. A farmer steps from the kitchen in work clothes, carrying the same gun his father used before him. One shot must settle the problem. The Champion was bought by men with little money and no time. One shell, one decision, nothing mechanical to blame. Number 22. The Hopkins and Allen Hammer Double. Hopkins and Allen operated in Norwich, Connecticut, from the 19th century into 1915, turning out affordable firearms for working buyers. Its doubles wore two exposed hammers above two barrels, making the gun's condition visible before anyone touched a trigger. That mattered on a farm after dark. A man standing inside a barn could thumb both hammers back and let the shape of the gun deliver the warning. No speech was required. During lambing season, a farmer might spend hours listening for dogs or coyotes beyond the lantern light. If one barrel failed to stop the animal, the second was already waiting. But the effect was often psychological. A stranger did not need to hear the gunfire. Two raised hammers said the barn was occupied, watched, and ready. Number 21. The Crescent Trade Name Double. Crescent Firearms of Norwich built shotguns that often reached buyers under somebody else's name. Smithsonian records preserve crescent-mate examples marked Essex and H.J. Sterling, while period directories list the company among manufacturers of affordable hammer doubles. That anonymity helped hardware stores sell guns. It also created uncertainty decades later. A grandson could recognize the shotgun hanging in the barn but know almost nothing about who built it, how old the barrels were, or which loads suited its construction. Rain darkens the walnut. Dust settles around the breech. If the barrels are twist steel, or simply uninspected after decades of use, the wrong modern load can turn an old farm tool into a risk for the man holding it. The danger is no longer only beyond the muzzle. The crescent protected farms for years, until its forgotten identity became part of the problem. Here is where the list changes. The first 5 shotguns were simple because farm life demanded certainty, not glamour. 1 barrel taught discipline. 2 exposed hammers made readiness visible. A trade name kept the factory hidden. But expanding fields, trucks, and livestock operations created problems one basic gun could not always solve. Farmers wanted a shotgun that tolerated rain, changed its pattern, reached farther, or delivered another shell without becoming expensive. From this point forward, the designs grow stranger and more deliberate, and by number 16, a repeating shotgun could reach an isolated farm without its owner ever entering a gun shop. Number 20. The Harrington and Richardson Topper. H&R built firearms in Worcester, Massachusetts, for generations, and the Topper carried that factory tradition into a single-shot farm gun. Common versions used a break-open action, an external hammer, and little machinery beyond what was necessary to fire 1 shell. That simplicity became its reputation. A Topper could ride behind a truck seat, collect dust in a mudroom, or show rust where rain had found the metal. It was not purchased to remain handsome. A farmer crosses a wet yard toward a snake near the firewood. The stock is dented, the receiver is cold, and there is no time to worry about finish. The Topper's advantage was availability. It was close, understandable, and ready before a better gun could be found. It survived because nobody expected it to stay beautiful. Number 19. The Mossberg Model 183D. In 1947, Mossberg introduced the bolt-action Model 183D as its first repeating shotgun and its first model with an adjustable choke. That device at the muzzle let one inexpensive gun change how tightly its pellets spread. For a family counting every dollar, that was more than a novelty. The same shotgun could be opened for a rabbit near the garden or tightened for a crow across the field. A short magazine also gave the shooter another shell without the speed or cost of a pump. At sunrise, a boy adjusts the choke while his father studies the fence line. One purchase has to cover several seasons and several kinds of trouble. The 183D mattered because one purchase covered several distances. A turn at the muzzle changed how far across the farm that answer could reach. Number 18. The Marlin Model 55 Goose Gun. The Model 55 was a bolt-action shotgun, but the Goose Gun version stretched the idea to an extreme. Its 12-gauge form carried a 3-inch chamber, a detachable 2-round magazine, and a barrel reaching 36 inches. That length gave the gun a silhouette closer to a pole than an ordinary field shotgun. It was slow to swing inside a barn, but open Midwestern fields were not close spaces. Geese, crows, and predators often appeared near the tree line. The muzzle extends beyond a blind while cold wind moves over harvested stubble. The farmer does not need rapid fire. He needs the first pattern to reach where a shorter gun feels uncertain. The Model 55's advantage was distance. It answered trouble at the far edge of the property before trouble reached the livestock. Number 17. The High Standard Flight King. By the 1960s, high-standard manuals listed Flight King pump shotguns in 12, 16, 20, and 28 gauge, along with 410 bore versions. The line came from a Connecticut company better remembered for pistols, while related actions appeared beneath retail house names. That made the Flight King easy to overlook. It had a tubular magazine, a sliding fore-end, and the follow-up shot rural buyers expected from a modern pump. What it lacked was the permanent prestige of Winchester or Remington. A farmer works the action beside an orchard after birds descend on the fruit. The empty hull is gone, another shell is ready, and the receiver's name matters less than the crop. Its advantage was simple. Famous. Brand work without the famous. Brand price. The mechanism lasted longer than the reputation surrounding it. Number 16. The J.C. Higgins Model 20. By mid-century, Sears sold the Model 20 under its J.C. Higgins house name, while High Standard built the pump beneath it. For a farmer, far from a gun shop, that changed more than the receiver's name. The purchase could begin at a kitchen table. A catalog lay beside seed prices, boots, and stove parts. Weeks later, a repeating 12-gauge arrived through the same system that supplied the farm. Its tubular magazine and sliding fore-end gave the owner follow-up shots instead of one rationed shell. That mattered when predators entered a chicken yard or birds settled over newly planted grain. After the Gun Control Act of 1968, interstate mail-order firearm purchases by individuals had to pass through federally licensed dealers instead of arriving directly at the buyer's door. Sears did not merely advertise a shotgun. It delivered repeating firepower to the end of an American road. Number 15. The Marlin Model 19. The Model 19 belonged to the 1906, 1907 generation of New Haven pump shotguns, with an exposed hammer and machinery that looked older than the farms where many surviving examples rested. It was built before the smooth and closed receivers of later repeaters became familiar. That age became its most unsettling feature. A gun could remain in barn rafters after the box, manual, spare parts, and first owner had disappeared. The family still recognized the slide and hammer, but not every worn surface inside. Decades later, a grandson pulls it from behind a grain bin. The metal is brown at the edges. The action still moves. Nobody remembers the last shell fired through it. Its threat was not speed alone. It was survival without explanation. A century-old repeater could still chamber ammunition in hands that no longer understood what time had changed. The gun outlived its instructions completely. Number 14. The Winchester Model 1911 self-loading. Winchester introduced its first semi-automatic shotgun in 1911, but the Model 1911 lacked the conventional charging handle modern shooters expect. Its long recoil system required the barrel itself to be pushed rearward during loading or clearing. That awkward arrangement later gave the shotgun a dark reputation when owners improvised around stuck shells or unfamiliar machinery. Rain beats against a barn roof while a shell remains inside the chamber. The livestock pen cannot wait, yet the gun demands a procedure unlike the pumps and doubles hanging nearby. The risk came from unfamiliar machinery, encouraging desperate improvisation. Its worst threat could begin behind the muzzle. The Model 1911 was designed to load itself, but it punished anyone who misunderstood how completely. Number 13. The Remington Model 17. Announced in 1921 at just under 6 pounds, the Model 17 was a lightweight 20-gauge pump whose influence became larger than its name. Its receiver and bottom-loading, bottom-ejecting layout helped establish a pattern later associated with a more famous shotgun. For farm families, the smaller gauge and lighter form offered value. A young shooter, a farm wife, or anyone crossing brush and fences all day could carry it without the burden of a heavy 12-gauge. But the real story appeared after production ended. The Model 17 faded from conversation while its basic ideas continued through later designs. Owners could admire the descendant without realizing an earlier Remington supplied the bones. A woman steps from a farmhouse toward the chickens. The light pump held close and balanced. It did not need mass to answer trouble. The Model 17 disappeared from the rack, but its shape remained in American hands. Number 12. The Remington Model 10. Introduced in 1908, the Model 10 placed loading and ejection beneath the receiver, sending spent shells toward the ground instead of across the shooter's face. Its pump action, tubular magazine, and rounded profile made it unlike side-ejecting repeaters that dominated later farm racks. On a dusty property, that lower opening offered a practical idea. Chaff, rain, and debris had fewer paths through the receiver's sides. A left-handed farmer also avoided empty hulls crossing his line of sight. A shot echoes inside a pigeon-filled barn. The pump moves, the empty shell strikes the boards below, and the next round rises without flashing past either cheek. The Model 10 preserved the shooter's attention. His eyes could remain on the yard while the gun disposed of what it had already fired. Before bottom ejection became famous elsewhere, Remington had already sent the empties to the barn floor. Number 11. The L.C. Smith Field Grade. Built in Fulton, New York from 1912, the Field Grade was the least expensive L.C. Smith sidelock, but used the same basic receiver construction as higher grades. In 1913, it listed for $25 with armor steel barrels offered from 26 to 32 inches. That price still placed it above the roughest hardware store doubles. A family that owned one cleaned it carefully, stored it indoors, and expected it to remain with the farm. Nearly 200,000 field grades were produced through 1,950, more than any other L.C. Smith grade. Its lock plates carried the family's confidence into the dark. Trouble moves near the livestock barn. The owner passes over the scarred utility gun and reaches for the Smith. That choice is the warning. When the field grade came off the wall, the problem had become serious enough to risk the family heirloom. Notice the pattern. These families were not choosing shotguns at random. A single shot conserved money and demanded care. A bolt gun traded speed for reach. A mail-order pump defeated distance, while bottom ejection kept the shooter's attention on the yard. Each design solved a different weakness: price, weather, weight, dirt, or the need for another shell. But the next group crosses into something more permanent. These guns were still working tools, yet craftsmanship and reputation began turning them into lifetime possessions. Number 7 would be remembered for something no photograph could capture: the almost frictionless feeling of its slide, moving beneath a farmer's hand after decades of hard field use. Number 10. The Lefevre Nitro Special. Ithaca began producing the Nitro Special in 1921, keeping the respected Lefevre name on a simpler box-lock double. It appeared in 12, 16, and 20 gauge, with a 410 version added later, and production continued into 1947. The important word was nitro. This was an old-fashioned side-by-side shape built for the smokeless powder era, when many families still owned doubles made under earlier assumptions. A farmer could recognize the two barrels and double triggers without inheriting the same uncertainty surrounding an anonymous twist steel gun. It offered tradition without demanding trust in obsolete barrel construction. At dusk, the Nitro Special rests beside the milkroom door, while movement crosses the pasture. It looks like something from a grandfather's youth, but the steel and action belong to a newer ammunition age. Confidence without confusion was the point. The farm had entered a different powder era, and this double was built to enter it too. Number 9. The Fox Model B. Savage added the Model B to its 1,940 Fox catalog at $25. It came in 12, 16, and 20 gauge, plus 410 bore with a case-hardened frame, double triggers, and the clean balance farmers associated with traditional side-by-sides. The Model B was not a handmade Philadelphia Fox. That was precisely the point. It gave a working family the shape and dignity of a classic double without demanding the price of a prestige gun. That familiar balance mattered during sudden movement. On Saturday evening, it could stand beside the back door while chickens settled into the coop. On Sunday morning, the same gun could cross a stubble field after quail. Its two barrels offered an immediate second answer, but its real appeal was social. The Fox made an ordinary farm look slightly more prosperous than it was. It worked for a living and still knew how to appear respectable. Number 8. The Stevens Model 311. By 1940, Savage had placed the Model 311 name on a plain box-lock double descended from earlier Springfield and Stevens utility guns. Common versions carried two triggers, simple extractors, and little decoration beyond the case-colored receiver. That lack of ornament became the attraction. A 311 could gather scratches beside a barn door, ride beneath a truck seat, and return every autumn without asking to be treated like a collector's piece. Its barrels opened, closed, and waited. For many owners, the gun's entire history was written in dents rather than engraving. Rain taps the roof. Outside, a fox circles the poultry yard while the walnut remains dented, the bluing thin, and both barrels locked against the action. Wear changed the 311's appearance far faster than it changed the gun's purpose. It was too plain to admire, too sturdy to replace, and too useful for the family to leave behind. Number 7. The Remington Model 31. Remington introduced the Model 31 inches 1931 as its first side-ejecting repeating shotgun. Offered in 12, 16, and 20 gauge, it remained in production until 1949 with roughly 196,000 built. Those numbers explain its reach, but not why old owners remembered it. The slide moved with a polished smoothness that made the next shell feel almost inevitable. Remington achieved that feel through careful machining, and careful machining cost money. At dusk, a farmer stands beside the corn crib as the first shot sends pigeons above the roof. His hand moves the forend back and forward with almost no rattle, and the gun is ready again before the flock clears the building. Its advantage was speed without the loose, hurried feel of a cheaper pump. It vanished not because the action was poor, but because smoothness this expensive became difficult to keep building. The photograph showed the gun. The hand remembered the motion. Number 6. The Ithaca Model 37 Featherlight. Ithaca placed the Model 37 into production in 1937, using a John Browning design refined into one of America's distinctive pumps. It loaded and ejected through the bottom, leaving the receiver sides closed. That mattered in rain, grain dust, and shoulder-high weeds. Empty hulls dropped toward the ground instead of crossing a right or left-handed shooter's face, while the light frame made long days along fences easier. A farmer moves through wet corn after hearing dogs near the poultry yard. The gun stays close to his body. One shell disappears beneath the receiver, the forend moves, and his eyes never leave the dark row ahead. Its strength came from saving motion when attention mattered. Everything entered and left through one low doorway. The Featherlight made hard farm work feel less heavy without making the shotgun feel less serious. From here on, the list crosses a line. The earlier guns survived because they were cheap, adaptable, or carefully made. The final 5 did more. They changed what farmers believed a repeating shotgun could be. One used a lever before the pump ruled the barn. Another turned recoil into its own loading force. Number 3 carried a takedown design from wagon boxes into military service. Number 2 became recognizable in farms, prisons, law offices, and war. And number 1 needed no exotic mechanism to win. It became the measure of trust itself. The shotgun a family kept because replacing it seemed less sensible than passing it down with the land. Number 5. The Winchester Model 1887. Winchester introduced the Model 1887 as a lever-action repeating shotgun designed by John M. Browning before pumps ruled rural America. Its receiver and lever made it look like a cowboy rifle, enlarged for shotgun shells. That familiarity mattered. Farmers who already understood lever rifles did not need a new language of movement. Drop the lever, raise it again, and the mechanism brought another shell into position with a deep mechanical clunk. In a ranch yard before electric light, horses shift behind a fence. Something moves near the feed shed, and the owner lowers the lever once. The sound carries farther than a quiet hammer click. Its power came from combining a familiar lever movement with repeating capacity. One sweep replaced the fired shell before the threat crossed the yard. But its greatest value on this list is historical. Before American barns learned the rattle of a pump, they heard the iron weight of a lever. The Model 1887 was a repeater built before history decided what a repeating shotgun should look like. Number 4. The Browning Auto 5. Production of the Auto 5 began in 1902, when John Browning placed an order for 10,000 guns with Fabrique Nationale. Its humpback receiver made it recognizable. But the true revolution happened inside. The original design used long recoil, allowing the barrel and action to move through the loading cycle after a shot. To a farmer raised on single shots and pumps, that motion looked almost alive. The gun used the force of firing to prepare another shell without demanding a hand on a lever or forend. Ducks lift from flooded ground while the first report rolls across the field. The barrel moves, the mechanism resets, and the shooter remains on the flock instead of working the action. With the Auto 5, the delay between shots nearly disappeared. It gave a prosperous farm rapid follow-up shots and a machine strong enough to become an heirloom. The barrel moved backward. The next shell moved forward. American shotgunning moved with them. The Auto 5 made an older generation watch the future operate against its shoulder. Number 3. The Stevens Model 520 and 620. The Model 520 appeared in 1909 with John Browning's pump-action design, a distinctive humpback receiver, and a takedown system that let the shotgun separate for transport or cleaning. The streamlined Model 620 followed in 1927. On a farm, that mattered before paved roads and enclosed truck cabs. The gun could travel inside a wagon box, behind a seat, or beside tools, without occupying its full length. Then the design entered a harsher record. Between 1942 and 1944, the United States Ordnance Department acquired 35,500 Model 520 to 30 shotguns in riot and trench configurations. Military markings showed that the same practical mechanism had been accepted for service far beyond the farm. A similar action returns to a rural home after wartime use. Mud, dust, and hard travel no longer sound like serious objections. Its reputation had crossed beyond the barn and into government service. It could be broken down, carried through rough country, assembled again, and trusted when winter roads turned impassable. Number 3. Did not merely survive farm work. It returned from war with proof that the farm had never been its hardest test. Number 2. The Winchester Model 1897. Winchester introduced the Model 1897 inches, 1897, and John Browning's exposed hammer pump remained in production for more than half a century. On the farm, its appeal was immediate. The owner could see the hammer, feel the slide move, and know another shell was available without opening the gun or lowering two barrels. Its history did not remain rural. During the First World War, American troops carried M1897 trench guns. In late 1918, the German government formally protested their use and threatened captured shotgun carriers. The United States rejected the claim and warned of reprisals. That dispute gave the farm pump a reputation no hardware catalog could manufacture. A farmer hears boards shift near the barn after midnight. One glance shows the hammer. One movement readies the repeater. The silhouette already carries a warning earned far beyond the property line. The exposed hammer made readiness visible, while the pump placed the next shell only one movement away. It worked fields, guarded institutions, and entered trenches. By number 2, a shotgun once used for farm work had become an American warning recognized across several worlds. Number 1. The Winchester Model 12. Introduced in 1912 as the Model 1912, this hammerless pump became one of Winchester's most respected designs. Its steel receiver, enclosed action, tubular magazine, and fitted slide created the strength and smoothness behind the company's perfect repeater name. In 1943, Winchester presented the 1,000,000th Model 12 to General Henry Hap Arnold of the United States Army Air Forces. But its place at number 1 was earned closer to home. A Model 12 could clear pests from a corn crib, travel through wet fields during hunting season, and stand near the house when dogs began barking after midnight. The gun moved between work, food, and protection without needing a different identity. A farmer wipes the receiver at the kitchen table. The bluing has thinned where his hand rested for 30 years. His son already knows the gun will someday become his. The family never had to wonder whether the Model 12 belonged in the crisis. It was already there. Other shotguns introduced stranger mechanisms or carried darker reputations. The Model 12 became something larger, the steel memory of an American farm that expected its tools to remain after their owners were gone. These 25 shotguns differed, like the farms that trusted them. Some cost only a few dollars, others represented years of saving. One fired a single shell, another used recoil to prepare the next. Several arrived through catalogs, while others returned to rural life carrying military markings. What joined them was distance. When winter buried the road, the telephone was absent, or the nearest help was miles away. The farm depended on tools already inside the house. So which would have earned your trust on a remote American farm? The one-shot Stevens Model 94, the battle-tested Winchester Model 1897, or the Winchester Model 12? Leave your choice in the comments and subscribe for more forgotten American history hidden inside ordinary objects.